Oh. Hi everyone, my name is Wissam and I am this week's host of Shiz and Giggles. I am so excited to welcome you guys to the show, and I'm also excited to introduce my co-host this episode, and that is Andrea.
Hey,
Hi
hey,
Andrea, how are
hey.
you doing?
Oh my gosh, so much better than last week. Ooh, last week
Oh,
was rough. I was sick as a dog.
oh
Right, even
no.
last Friday, I was like, man, turn it on for the camera.
Yeah, but this is a much better week. So many exciting things happened. Um, so we want to introduce the topic for this episode, and that is women empowerment. And it's perfect timing, especially with this event we've had recently, which is Women Building Bio.
Yeah, that was this week. That was this week. What a week, by the way. What
Yeah,
a week.
what an amazing week, right?
Yeah,
So,
little piece of heaven every day, we Sam. It's
yeah.
like it's a little bit of heaven.
Yeah.
Ah, God.
Um, this event that we held this past Wednesday was about covering innovators, researchers, and a bunch of other people who are advancing in the science field. And Andrea, we're excited to hear about how it went. Can you give us a little bit of detail?
I can. Let's see. It was great. Our one of our the keynote speakers. Well, first the event was Women Building Bio, hosted by Virginia Bio, and one of the keynote speakers was Camille Schreier. She is the reigning Miss America 2020. And so, what a pleasure to meet her and to speak with her. And so it went off really well. And for those people who don't know, Miss America this year, like 2020 Miss America, she won all of it by doing science experiments. So, I mean, when she was doing like Miss Virginia and then she went on to win all these other pageants, her talent was always a science experiment. So she's kind of a science geek, if you will, and she talked about how breaking stereotypes is so important. And she was talking about women's empowerment. And while she was talking about it, I remember just thinking in my mind, hey, it's 2020. Like, how is this still a conversation? It's like 2,000 years in 2020 years since we started recounting, right? Since the clock started over.
Right.
How is this still a thing? And so, but the event itself went like really well. It was so very good. If I could share it, I would with him. I would like put it on YouTube and everybody could watch it, but can't. That's not how that works.
Yeah,
So, but it was a really good event. Really good
that's
event.
so awesome. And
And shout out to the rest of the team, like the whole production team. They killed it. And they are currently killing it. If you're wondering why it's just me and we Sam, it's because they are currently in an event that just started 3 minutes ago. So they are working hard for Richmond Region Tourism right now. So shouts out to the production team. Shouts out Richmond Region Tourism. Love you
yeah,
guys.
the
I'm here
production
for
team's awesome.
this. Mm-hmm.
It's so exciting. I think one of my favorite parts was how Miss America was in this event, and you know, women can see all sorts of fields and rise up in those fields.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I guess shifting over to like rising in an industry,
Mm-hmm.
you started all about presentation, and you are the CEO of All About Presentation. And I'm just wondering, what's it like being, a CEO and a woman in this industry and, in a professional realm as a whole?
Yeah. So let me just say this. I am very lucky and blessed
Mhm.
that I get to do what I do and I get to be with all of you. Um, like we have, I just think we have a great team, Sam. I hope you agree. But
Oh,
we
I
just have a
definitely agree.
really cool group of people that we get to work with every day.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so I don't have it as hard as maybe other people do. And our industry does have a lot of women in it. There could be arguments made about leadership within the industry, and if you look at the people that get TV gigs, that are on television, that are in the event industry, you could kind of look at what the proportion of that looks like. So
Hmm.
there's so many arguments to be made. I won't make them here. I don't have the energy to fight that on a Friday at 4 o'clock. But what I will say is that, especially in the STEAM and STEM, like I couldn't even imagine what it's like to do sort of those uphill battles where you you have a stereotype with you. And so I wonder, like, part of me wants to just, if it was me in a male dominated industry, I wonder, do you just, kind of lead with, I'm the best at this. I went to MIT, I went to, Georgia Tech, or I went to Virginia Tech, right?
Hmm.
I went to these places and I have these skill sets. I deserve to be here.
Right.
So I don't know if maybe if I was in a different industry,
Hmm.
how my journey would be different and what that would look like. But I do often wonder, you know, do women in those situations, do they lead with their experience? I mean, do you have to lead with your credentials in order to even be heard? I don't I don't know how that works. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know how it works either because, I'm in a similar industry as you, but it is something that crosses my mind, and especially what's that perception, whether you do lead with your like credentials or whether how many decisions you make and the
Yeah,
judgment that gets passed upon. That's something that I am conscious of and I try to be aware of. But at
yeah.
the same time, I don't want to minimize my skills. And I don't want, say I am in a male dominated industry. I
Hmm.
don't want my female colleague to feel the same way of, you know what, I just won't make a decision or I'll just like sit back or anything. It's hard. It's harder. And for me personally, the judgment is what I worry about. I'm trying to
Mm.
break through that of not worrying about what someone will think or perceive me as just because I can make a decision.
Let me ask you this. I know one of the things we got when you first started working here was, a lot of times men,
Hmm.
and this is what we talked about, introductions. We were all in a room and everybody was introducing themselves. And women, like when we introduce ourselves, we say like, "Hi, I'm Andrea, and I do this thing."
Hmm.
And we talked about how men a lot of times will do like, they'll lead and they'll include a credential or something that goes in it. And I feel like sometimes women are not as, we won't readily do the same thing. We just kind of
Hmm.
say, I am this person and here is this thing, right? What do you think, we Sam, and especially you, because you do not only look different here, but look different here.
Hmm.
I mean, you got a whole lot going.
Yeah,
So what is that like for you? Like, how do you feel like you get perceived initially?
it's interesting because I always make jokes about, especially being, a child of immigrants and also being Muslim and Arab. That's a huge part of my identity, and I never want to hide that. And so I feel like when I first step into a room, there might be a preconceived notion of, oh, maybe she's in STEM, or like, oh, I'm surprised she's like into photography. It's the
Oh, she's got to be in STEM. She's got to be a doctor.
yeah, like that. I
Oh
think
man.
that's something that's not as prevalent anymore,
Mhm.
but I it's harder, especially with credentials. It's like you read my mind. I just remember that day so well of when you told us in our meeting about how, sometimes, most of the time, men uh, lead with that credential, whereas women tend to not.
Yeah.
And it was eye opening, and I thought to myself, you're right. Like, I should be proud of my accomplishments and my titles. And, one of the things that I pride myself for is the fact that I am a photographer. And I love to say that I am a photographer. And I know that I have the skills to follow up with that title and that storytelling. So it's something that I now will hold on to. And I'm just wondering how you think of that as well. And, how do you follow with the judgment of, like, should I say my credentials?
Yeah. So let me tell you a little story, and nobody really knows this, so you're about to get in on it.
Oh,
So when I first started All About Presentation, very few people know this actually. When I first started All About Presentation, and I would have people work for me, and we put our picture in our signature.
yeah.
The only reason why we do that is not because it's a friendly face and it looks cool, and that's what everybody does now. But we started doing it because when I would go on site visits
Mm,
or to places like to go meet people, um, if I was with someone who was not a person of color that
mm-hmm,
worked for me,
mm-hmm,
the assumption would be that that must be Andrea. So I was never assumed as Andrea, which yeah, so not many people know that. And that's, I mean, it was cute to put the picture in and everybody does it, but we did not do it for that reason. We did it simply because people would confuse my colleagues or counterparts
mm-hmm,
for the CEO, especially if they didn't look like me, which is very, very interesting. So I actually, I don't lead with my credentials. I feel like, the best of the best and the brightest of the brightest, they don't ever have to lead. They don't have to wear their credentials on their name tag. But
mm-hmm,
I do know that that has been a struggle for me before in terms of credentialing. Should we
mm-hmm.
be sharing our credentials? Is that like something you lead with?
Right.
But for me, the assumption has always been that it's usually the person who is not of color was Andrea before, because Andrea has CEO in her title.
Right.
So that is like, I mean, just little fact that as we have grown and have gone along the way,
Mm-hmm.
that's something that has changed over time. But it certainly was something starting out as
That,
a issue.
wow, I never even, that thought didn't even cross my mind,
Yeah.
as far as like the email signatures. And how would you say, even though women are predominantly in the event planning industry, how would you say it differs for women of color and minorities, and
Oh wow,
the
there's like a
empowerment of that group?
that is such a great question. So gosh, we're going way, way too far deep. I won't go too far deep on Friday at 4, but I will say there is a perception that that like people ask me all the time, do you do weddings and baby showers?
Mm,
That happens a lot. It's not the assumption that no, we handle multi-million dollar accounts for corporations and government agencies. The
right.
assumption is always, oh, do you do weddings? And I don't know that that's about color, right? Like I'm not saying that is, but I do think there's a gender bias in that, right? Like if
Mm,
a man says he plans events, the assumption would be like corporate government conferences, that sort of thing. I
right.
do think there's a gender bias in terms of like if a woman says she is in the events world, it's like, oh, weddings, baby showers, and that's not always the truth either. So, and then, like I said, I wouldn't assign like race to it or ethnicity to that necessarily. I bet you I have a lot of sisters with lighter, fairer skin
Mm,
who would say the same thing, that the immediate assumption is like weddings or something, right? It can't be like, no, 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 multi-million dollar accounts is what we manage. That's not the
yeah.
initial impression.
That that's a very interesting point of the whole, like, the types of events, right? Even though if you were to say you're a woman in event planning, like, okay, there are a lot of women in event planning, but it's the types. I sometimes it's those things that just draw me back into realizing why it's so important to talk about this sort of thing and to also focus on women empowerment. And I'm just wondering, do you have any techniques for yourself for kind of building yourself up or like hyping yourself up each day or being in that mindset?
No. Yes. Okay. So, but I told you guys about this week.
Oh,
Like, you know,
yeah,
I was telling you about how, self speak is so important,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
and what you say in certain times matters, and you have to have a place where you come back to. So
Right.
for me, mine is sometimes I get anxious about things that I'm doing. I get anxious about God. I mean, it's a pandemic, right? So there's so many things to be anxious about and so many things that are going on. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm very cognizant of what I say to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I have a little mantra that I say to myself in my head when those moments arise, what gets me to a place of being the most effective, right? So I'm no longer in a place where I question, am I effective? Can I do my job? I don't question that at all. I'm really, really good at my job. Right? I'm good at it. What I do question or what I think about is, do I, like, if I'm doing too many things, it gets me out of my space where I'm comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
and it gets me in a different headspace. So I do things to help me stay in the right mindset. I have a saying that I say, I have a mantra for myself, but I think one of the biggest things that anybody can do is to meditate and to become centered with who they are, and be okay with not knowing everything, and being okay with not being okay. If you say, listen, this is not a space I'm comfortable in, that's cool. If you say, I am not feeling comfortable, that's cool. Right? I think we just have to be okay in the spaces that we're in. I think a lot of our, everybody, a lot of our issues arise when we compare ourselves to other people.
Mm-hmm.
I think as someone put it, like, you're comparing your your life to someone else's highlight reel, right?
Right.
So, I think that's the biggest issue to me, that I think all of us get ourselves into trouble with, is when we're comparing ourselves to someone else and where they are in the thing that they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Whether, like, some people are like, well, I don't have a house yet. I'm 30. I should have a house. And it's like, well, first of all, let's talk about the merits of home ownership, and is it even really beneficial nowadays? Let's talk about that. But then, is that whose whose timeline are we using to judge where you are? So,
I
I
love
mean, it's
that.
a long story to what, or a long answer to what you're saying, but the short answer is yes. Yes, I do have things that kind of keep me centered and focused, for sure.
Right. Yeah,
What
that's
about
awesome.
you? What about you, Misam? What do you do? What do you
I
do for keeping your head in the right spot?
I think similar to you, especially during this pandemic, I've really started to focus on myself and how I talk to myself. Because before, like a year ago, I was the type that, you make those like jokes about yourself, like, oh, I'm not good enough, or something like that. But I've shifted dramatically over this year in telling myself that, you know, I'm confident and I can do whatever it is that I want to do, and I can set those high goals. And if I tumble and fall a little bit, that's okay. That's part of the process, right? And I've told myself, especially, to slow down.
Yeah,
I I've just always been the type that's like, go, 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 and
yeah,
what's the next thing? But I tell myself, you know what? Focus on what's in front of me. Work doesn't end. There's always going to be something to do, and focus on what's in front of me so that I'm producing the best to my ability and
yeah,
how well I know I can do.
yeah. Well, I think you're pretty fantastic, just so you know.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. I think you're pretty amazing too. I've learned so much, and I feel, especially with all about presentation being, all women in the office, and you feel an empowerment being in this sort of environment, and you feel confident, and you don't feel that pressure of my question has to be perfect or
I love that.
everything I do has to be perfect.
Yeah.
You're learning and growing together, and I'm wondering, do you have a reasoning behind this and why, like, the office is all women, and especially there are minority women in the office too?
Yeah. Okay. So, God, Sam. All right. So, I will say this, and I've never said it publicly. I just remember that one time someone said, you probably should think about diversifying your workforce, right?
Mhm.
And for what that means, like, and what he meant was hire men.
Okay,
That's what he meant.
got.
So, and I thought at the time, I was like, I don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do something totally different. I
Mm-hmm.
want to build a place, create a place where women and women of color can develop and grow and build their leadership skills. That's it. That's the whole reason behind what we do. It's not to leave men out, it is because this is a space that allows for women and women, particularly women of color,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to do the things that they wouldn't maybe be able to do at much larger organizations. So
Right.
we have people like, I'll give you an example, like someone on our team who is incredible, who wouldn't get, who may be at a larger, much larger organization where she would probably, because of her age, because of her background, she probably would not be able to do the types of things she's doing. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like she is able to, at a very, what I would consider younger age,
Mm-hmm.
she is able, she has meetings with Miss America. Like she had a meeting with Miss America this week. She's had meetings with all these like celebrity people that we work with, are big timey people. She talks to senators, like not just state senators, like US senators. She talks to governors. She talks to all these people, and she wouldn't have an opportunity to do that. She wouldn't have the exposure to do that. And certainly, my background and where I come from, in a little small town right outside of Detroit, um, I would have never had that opportunity to do that. So, in those experiences, you gain leadership that you would not normally have access to. So, that is the reason for all about presentation. And we have a very strategic way that we hire, but it is purposeful. It is, we need to be able to provide opportunities for
Mm-hmm.
leadership for women
Yep.
and women of color. So, and I won't back down from that. I am not ashamed of that at all. At
Mm-hmm.
all.
I think that's part of the pressure of, you know, well, why is it all women, or those questions that might circulate around. And I think it's at that time, at that point, where you look at your values and at your leadership. And I remember my first day, how you really emphasize leadership. You emphasize that you want us to grow as leaders. And this is such an important foundation for all women. And it's something that we need to really kind of think about.
I agree. I completely agree. I completely agree. So, we Sam, before we, I know it's getting close here, and you know me, I don't really do much after 3 o'clock on Friday. So 4:30 is like I'm done here.
It's like,
So as we close up and as we end, I just want to kind of like ask you a question. What is the thing, if you had to drop your credentials, what is the thing you would say I am most proud of? Like something that I had to accomplish that I did,
mm-hmm.
and I'm really proud of it, and I'm not going to back away or shy away from that,
I think
or dumb
something,
it down to make other people feel better.
yeah, I think something that shifted with me this year again, really a year of growth. It's incredible. Um, but so back earlier in the year, I received an internship, and it's a pretty prestigious internship. And before, I didn't want to say it was prestigious. I didn't want to throw
Who's
out
it with?
numbers. It was with Dow Jones News Fund. and I was accepted into the digital media internship program. And, you know, that's a name drop. And I didn't like to do that name drop at first because
Yeah.
I didn't want to make others feel bad.
Like you were bragging.
Yeah, I
Mm,
didn't want to talk down to anyone. So
yeah.
I was like, yeah, I got an internship. I'm really excited for it. But name drop, it's okay. Show your title. Like, I am the biggest, like, what do you say? Like, fan of this now. Just talk about yourself, hype yourself up. It's so important.
Yeah, I think there's a balance. I do think there's a balance, but it's not to brag.
Oh, for
But
sure.
I also think that you don't want to shrink back, which we as women have a tendency to do anyway.
Yeah.
We will shrink to make others feel bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just over that.
Yeah.
I'm also over, since we're on the things I'm over, and then we'll wrap up. I'm
Mm-hmm.
over parents who have to homeschool right now, being tough on themselves and everyone else, because
Yes.
this is a hard thing right now.
Yes.
This is a very hard thing that people are doing right now with the homeschooling and the teachers and the thing. I'm over the complaining in terms of like feeling bad about yourself in trying to get everything done. Hey, everybody take a beat, all
Mm-hmm.
right? This is a pandemic. This
Yep.
is the makings of the greatest generation all over again,
Yep.
right? Like, this is tough. And we
Mm-hmm.
need to stop talking about each other for how they're doing it or how
Yes.
someone else is doing it. People are doing it the best way they can to go forward. And I feel like we should take the judgment out of our current situation, and
Mm-hmm.
we just need to give each other a hand clap and go, you are doing great. This is
Yes.
so hard. Who thought any of us would be doing this? This is
Honestly,
terrible. We all know it, and we're still here anyway. Can we all just give ourselves a hand clap of praise?
just give a round of applause.
Because okay, a big one,
Yes,
right? A big one, because it's so necessary.
it
And
really is.
so that's other things. I will get off my soapbox on that. But it is true. We cannot keep talking about each other or
Mm-hmm.
ourselves in what we didn't get done today,
Yep.
or I didn't get all this done and I should have done so much more. I'm over it. I'm over it. You
Yes.
did great. So anybody listening, all of our millions of viewers watching, listen, you did great this
Mm-hmm.
week. Today, it was a good week. It was a good
Yes.
week. Let's pack it up. Let's say, hey, we got
Mm-hmm.
through this one. We will worry about the next one when it comes, right?
Yes.
So I will say that for all of you listening, you have my support and you did great. Did
And I
great.
second that. I
Did
second that.
great.
So
Did great.
amazing. You just have to give yourself credit. Have empathy for yourself and for others, and
Ooh,
be
big
proud
word,
of yourself.
empathy for yourself. Yes.
Yes.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it.
I can't think of a better note to end on here. Feeling empowered and excited and ready for the weekend after an amazing week.
Great, 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 great week. Thank you, Wee Sam, for doing this. Thanks for letting me be your co-host. I appreciate you.
Thank you so
Love you
much
so
for
much. Love you so
joining
much.
me.
Have
Love
a great
you.
weekend. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Bye bye.